Well, I would say it was a bit of a shocker. It wasn't a total shocker because we did expect the Republicans to do very well. They did a lot better than most experts thought, and I myself had predicted 53 seats. There, it looks like they're getting 57. So that's a shocking victory, and they've got to be very happy. Plus, they won a lot of those governorships that were out there that I thought were probably going to tilt to the Democrats. We don't have all the results in, but we've already seen that states like Maryland and I believe Colorado went to the Republicans, and Illinois did as well. And so those were all ones that I picked to go the other way. It's a big difference. It's at least 10% difference, sometimes 15% difference, and that's not evenly spread across the two parties. A higher turnout is beneficial to Democrats. A lower turnout is generally beneficial to Republicans. And so at midterm time, the Republicans stand in a good position. That doesn't mean they can always win, but they're in a good position with a low turnout. Well, it's surprising that there was so little discussion during the campaign about actual policy alternatives, with the one exception of health care, Obamacare. But even the Republicans dropped that to some extent, as it seemed not to be catching on so well. But there are a lot of other things that could have been discussed. Let's say, for example, climate change, barely mentioned. There was very little talk about concrete foreign policy questions. Really what this election was it was very highly personalized. It was a referendum about Obama, and the Republican strategy was to do that, to have a referendum, and they succeeded. And to some extent, perhaps the Democrats cooperated a little too much, even without realizing it, that they too accepted the idea that it was a referendum on Obama. And so many of their candidates simply had to distance themselves from him. And that's never a good position. The Democrats were on the defensive the whole time. And you see that, by the way, in the way money got spent. The Democrats poured money into their own districts where they held seats to protect them. The Republicans were spending more money in races where Democrats held the seats, and the Republicans were hoping to knock them off. So the Republican strategy, money-wise, was extremely attack-oriented, and the Democrats were very defensively oriented. The shocking aspect of it is that in this election it seems to have been such a dramatic and systematic movement away from the Democrats and away from Obama. And remember, this is the second midterm election that Obama has lost. Many presidents lose midterms, but sometimes the loss is very minimal, and sometimes they even win a few seats. But this second time around, a pretty severe, shocking outcome, and it puts Obama in a weak position from a policy perspective. Well, it means that there's going to be a lot of conflict over a lot of policy issues. The Senate and the House are going to submit legislation to the President in the form of House budgetary legislation with many amendments attached. And Obama is going to find himself in a position where he has to either accept that budget proposal as a whole, even though it's full of amendments he doesn't like, or use his veto power, which he has. But presidents don't like to use the veto power too often. It makes them look very negative. And we are going into a presidential campaign. And even though Obama can't run, the Democratic Party wants to look positive. One good thing about this is that the Republicans in Congress, the more senior people, are very oriented towards international affairs and very oriented towards allies such as Germany and our other NATO allies. And they will be inclined to want to improve these relations. And I do think this is one area where Obama and the Congress can cooperate. It shouldn't be one of the big battlegrounds, and let's hope it isn't. No, everybody's going to be talking about it. Well, we just don't know that much yet. Everybody thinks Hillary Clinton will be the candidate. Yes, that's certainly what we would, that's probably a pretty good guess. On the Republican side, anything can happen. It's going to be a wild year in 2016 by the primaries, which start in February. And even before that, the maneuvering pre-primaries, pre the Iowa caucus where it all starts, is going to be very intense. And the way in which the Republican potential candidates present themselves and the way in which they start to criticize one another, that's going to be quite interesting. But really it gets really exciting once we get to the primary season and things really get hot.